can have that going for us. Okay, hello recording, because I know that there are some people that are going to be watching this via the recording. So here we are recording. Welcome to what I did last summer, fall 2021. We all made it. Congratulations. Real quick, I'm just going to send the order for those of us that are speaking. I'm going to send the order in the chat. Dr. Heller, congrats, you're up first. But just really quick, just an introduction of what this event is. Oh, and who I am. I'm Anna. I'm a junior. I'm majoring in archaeology. I'm minoring in folklore, and I am the co-president of STARC. We also have Sean, who is the other co-president of STARC, on here with us, and Lauren, who is the vice president. And this event is really just like a STARC classic. We have it every fall semester because summer is when the cool things happen. It's when we're not in classes, and so it's when we get to go fun places and do fun things. And then we all come back and share what we did. And this is just a really great time to catch up with students, faculty, and just see what we've all been up to. Anyone else have anything else to say? Cool. Then on that note,
I was just gonna say thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and we look forward to seeing you guys at future STARC events. But yes.
Great. On that note, Dr. Heller, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Anna. It's so really good to see you, even if it is in Zoom, all of you, the little gray boxes and all. I hope we get to see each other in person pretty soon. That would be excellent. But until then, I do have a little, hopefully short, mercifully short presentation. Can you see my screen? All right, yeah, so this is what I did last summer. It looks like I'm relaxing here, but as you'll see, I had very little time for that. It started out with a lot of personal business, I suppose. So I got married, right? So that was pretty great. It was an awesome day. I'll tell you more about it some other time. I then went on my honeymoon where I did this and that and some of this and quite a lot of that and, so on and so forth. Basically went everywhere. It was awesome. Beautiful places all across the West. So I'm very privileged to have been able to do that. Here's just a couple. I promise I won't give you the whole slideshow. Maybe I will give you the whole slideshow. Oh, so the other thing I did is I moved to LA to be closer to all of you, which is fantastic. Actually, I'm loving it so far. So it's nice to be in the city and nice to be close to work. I now commute by train or by light rail as opposed to heavy rail, which is a nice upgrade. But I promise you also, I did some work too. I managed to sneak some in there, which is great. So mostly I was focused on the Canyon Country Cultural Landscapes VR project. I'll let this kind of play in the background. I think many of you know about this already, but for those who don't, the CCCLVR project for short, still not that short, but that project is really about scanning sites, 3D scanning sites in the American Southwest primarily, and working with a number of organizations, a number of stakeholders, including most importantly, Indigenous communities, the Bureau of Land Management, other conservation organizations. And what we're doing is we're building educational VR experiences around these sites in the Southwest, starting with this one here, one of my favorites, Moon House, which you could see the model in its sort of present state, or actually maybe an iteration or two back. Some STARC folks have done excellent work that's not reflected here yet in this video. But at any rate, yeah, so that's been kind of it. We're working with Indigenous peoples to include their narratives about what these places mean to them, as well as layering all kinds of other content in there. So a little bit of work done on that. Notably, and I'm very proud of this, we secured an additional 3 years of funding for the project from the Bureau of Land Management. it's a quite a lot of money, and I'm very grateful for their support, their enthusiasm. It's really, really nice to be able to know and kind of plan ahead and sort of enter into the next phase of the project, or at least be kind of plotting out the next phase of the project, which also some good news on that front. We developed our first official Indigenous collaborative partner with the Ute Mountain Ute. It was really kind of a crazy experience, nothing that I've ever done before, but we actually presented via Zoom in front of the Ute Mountain Ute Tribal Council. And it was just an incredible experience, and their support was, they just, overwhelming support for the project. We have an official resolution of support from them. So good, big ups to my collaborators there. I'm really, really looking forward to working with them in the future. And just very, very recently, we got some capture done at the site of Moonhouse again. Just this past weekend, I'm still a little sunburned from it. So we snuck in a Labor Day trip. I think that still counts as summer. What do you say? Yeah. Yeah, barely summer. So we got out back to the site where we scanned an additional 6 rooms. Some of these interior spaces that had been just sort of dark blobs before will now soon be filled out. So very happy about that. And of course, the rest of the time I'm going to be modeling up these rooms in 3D and getting this model kind of completed. And I'll just stop there and maybe leave you with one note that there's lots of ways to get involved in this project. If this is the kind of thing, I always have to end with the sales pitch. If this is the kind of thing that you might be interested in getting involved in, hey, I can find a home for you somewhere where this project's just blossoming, where there's room for ethnographic work, audio, video work, of course, 3D capture and modeling, of course, lots and lots of facets of this moving forward. So anyway, I'll leave it right there. Thank you very much for your time and attention. And I will, I'll stick around, I suppose. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Heller. Does anyone have any questions before we move on? Cool. Okay. Also, once COVID allows people to put on virtual reality headsets, I would 10 out of 10 suggest a visit to virtual reality Moonhouse because it's so cool. Okay. Next is Lauren, who had a wild summer. So take it away.
Hello, everyone. I did have a wild summer. It was crazy. Have I peaked? That's the question right now. 1 second while I pull up the PowerPoint presentation. It's always when you need it that you can't find the screen that you're looking for. Okay, here we go. So this is me, Lauren Malcoon Summer, the 2021 edition. So I am Lauren Malcoon. I just finished my freshman year. I'm starting my sophomore year of undergrad at USC, obviously. And I am majoring in archaeology. And so after I finished my freshman year, so this past summer, I was researching and doing field research too, so excavating, so that was fun. So we ended the semester around mid-May, and up until mid-end June, I was working on a couple projects with the archaeology lab and with Dr. Lynn Dodd, who's here today. And then I had to pause those projects for a bit to go on some excavations, which I was so excited to do because having graduated high school in during like the peak of the pandemic, I didn't really get to do much traveling that summer. So it was kind of summer 2021 or summer 2020 was a bit stagnant being home, but for good reason. And summer 2021 was absolutely incredible. So I will go into telling you about that right now. So first, I went to Carrascosa, Spain, and in Carrascosa, Spain, I was a student supervisor on a high school excavation. It was through this program called Archaeology Spain, and when I was in high school, I did that program, and that's how I got introduced to archaeology. So it was a nice little full circle moment, and I was able to supervise students who were in the same position that I was in when I was in high school. So here are some pictures. On the left, we had dug a trench, found nothing there, and it happened to be a 5-foot trench. And I'm 5 feet tall, so we wanted to see if I could fit in it. So obviously I decided to lay on it, but then someone grabbed a shovel. So my instinct was to cover my eyes. And this picture was captured. I think it's hilarious because you can kind of see the shadow on the left side just hovering over me. I find it so funny. And then on the right is one of our excursions to visit another site that the program goes to with a group of university students. And that was in the modern day city where that castle was located. So super cool stuff. And here's some more pictures. So like I said, I was supervising. And so we got to do a lot of things. If you can you see my mouse if I do this? Yes. Okay, cool. So here we are taking a picture. However, let's just say it was kind of sunny, but we really needed to get the picture done that day because we had just uncovered a bunch of ceramics next to a few bones. And so with the prime positioning, we couldn't wait any longer. So we needed to take a picture. So there's me right here, and then one of the students, and then here's one of the site directors. And we were just, creating shade. We probably could have grabbed a tarp, but in the moment, this seemed like the best option. And then on the top right, we were actually near a bunch of mines of lapis specularis, and lapis specularis was used to make windows, or was what Romans used to make windows for the most part. And so this was a piece that I found on the ground, like right outside of some of the mines that we visited. And so it was super cool. And these are just some pictures of some of the students. There's me, I didn't know this was being captured, so I feel quite proud of this picture right here because it's like very candid and I didn't even have to pose for it. And here's a picture of us surveying. So one thing that was really nice was that I got to do some surveying and teach some of the students how to do that and what that looks like. Also some jousting or fencing, I guess you could call it, with the meter six. Definitely an important life skill for archaeology. But yeah, so this was my Carrascosa trip, and we got to see so many cool things. There was this really amazing person, his name was Manuel, and we got to go to his library, and he has a red library, as you can see right here. And I just absolutely love that library. 10 out of 10 recommend painting your library that color red if you are ever thinking about it. So that was my trip to Carrascosa. We were working on a site called Roman Fortress Pulpon. They're publishing a book about it, I believe, at the end of this year, because this is, I think they've been working on this site for many, many years. So they're compiling all of the research, especially the ones from this year, and are gonna write a book about it. So stay tuned for that. And then next, I went to Pompeii. So this is kind of where it's already pretty insane there. And the fact that I got to go to Carrascosa and have this whole full circle moment, didn't think it could get any crazier. And then I went to Pompeii. So I went to Pompeii as a student for another Archaeology Spain program instead of as the supervisor for the program. And I got to excavate there. So this was one of the days when I was walking around the city, Pompeii. And the interesting thing about our site, so our site is called Porta Sarno, and Porta Sarno it's part of the city of Pompeii, but something interesting about Pompeii and Roman cities in general is that the necropolis were built around just around the city walls. So our site Porta Sarno is technically outside of the city walls, but on top of that, there was a train built. So our site is like, you have the city walls, then you have the train track, or a little bit of space, and then you have another necropolis right here, than the train tracks. And then on the other side of the train tracks, you have the site Porta Sarno. So because there are train tracks there, right now they're actually in the process of constructing a tunnel to connect our site to the park of Pompeii, so that people can come and visit it by just going through the park instead of having to walk all the way around and then get to our site. So yeah, it was in a super interesting location, but it was definitely very fun to work at. Less tourists, obviously, so you weren't constantly watched at every moment, which was definitely nice. But yeah, I'll get right into some pictures. So I mainly have pictures of all the things that we did and all of the people there, and not of what we found, just because things are still in publishing, except I do have a picture here that I can show you of the site. You can kind of see it. And then there will be more pictures coming out soon. There are some more pictures on USC Archaeology that got approved by the director. So please, please, please check out the USC Archaeology Instagram account to see more of what we found. But yeah, right here, you can kind of see me in like the yellow. That's me pickaxing. I love to pickaxe. Pickaxes are great. And then the entire trip was very surreal. We got to walk around the city. We went to other prominent sites, such as right here. We went to the Villa of Pompeii, and then where is it? Right here is actually me in Herculaneum. So the taverns in Herculaneum, right as seen right here, are extremely well preserved in terms of like the vessels being in place. Pompeii just did open an exhibit for one of their taverns where the murals on the outside of it are like nearly fully intact and did not need too much conservation. So check that out. But so this was in Herculaneum, and so Romans weren't really tall. They were only around like 5 feet average. And so that's my height. And so I decided to be the tavern owner, and that's my friend Sabrina. She's also right here and right here. And so I denied her food, and I told her she had to leave. So she wasn't very happy. So that's what's going on in the picture there. This is her telling me what she wants to order. This is me telling her that we cannot serve her and that she needs to leave. So there's that. This is actually one of the flour mills that we walked into. There were about like 5 of these mills in that one room, which was insane. And then right here is actually a giant oven. So it was very, very cool. And just those rooms were just rooms like that where things were like very much intact, were just all over Pompeii. So it was very, very cool to see. Right here, this horse. So this is in Pompeii. But this is something that I did not know until later, when I was so confused as to why there's this horse man with his head in the rear of the horse. And it turns out this is modern art. So this is not Roman whatsoever, but this is somebody's artwork that they put in. This is in the Forum. And, you know, it's tarnished enough where it does look like it belongs, but it's just very confusing because there's nothing else like it except for its matching statue that overlooks the antiquarium, which is also modern art. And so it's very confusing because if you're walking around just as a tourist without any audio guide telling you what it is, you might think that that's a Roman statue, and it's not, but it's very fun to look at. So it was very cool to see those things. I did not expect to see some modern art in the park. But yeah, so here are also just some more pictures. This right here is on one of the lab days. So our lab was at one of the previously excavated necropoli, and it was previously excavated by the same director. So we would, and there was a shed there, so we would set up shop near the shed because the shed was our storage unit. It was like very organized and was kind of the makeshift space for where everything would be stored and kept safe and such. So we would always set up our lab there unless we obviously needed an actual lab, in which case we would use the biological lab in the center of Pompeii. So here's some important things you can see. There's some shards of pottery right there. And then I believe there's Pringles right here. So the two necessities, pottery shards and Pringles, obviously. And yeah, I'm trying to see what else is in here. we got to do a lot of excursions. So here is one from us in Naples. Here's us at the site again. It was one of our last lab days, and I decided to have a water fight after we'd put away all of the artifacts because I have to be responsible. So we put away all the artifacts on one of our last lab days, and then those 2 empty water bottles, somebody had left their water at the lab a few days ago, so it was old and no one was going to drink it. So I figured we might as well put it to good use, and it was a very hot day per usual, and we had a nice water fight. He was actually in the FBI, so he went very easy on me, if you cannot tell, because he should have won this water fight, but he was pretty nice about it. But yeah, so those are the pictures. And just to go over a bit, so in Pompeii at our site, the Porta Sarno Necropolis, we were able to find some amazing things. So this site here is mainly where I was excavating. And then there's a mausoleum back here, which has been making the news over and over again. And so that mausoleum back there is the tomb of Marcus Venerius Secundio. And he was, we found him in his tomb. We found his tomb, and we also found some family members and a nikia near the mausoleum too. So it's quite interesting. And what's interesting about it too is that Romans typically cremated their dead. However, Marcus was found fully inhumated and fully intact. And because of the way he was buried on a stretcher that was probably wooden, and the wood decomposed fully. However, he has not yet. So there is still some hair on his scalp, which is incredible. But yes, it's definitely something that's hard to talk about and hard to explain, just because human remains and burial and all of that stuff is such it's such a delicate thing to talk about, because you have these people that are being buried and they don't think they're going to be dug up, or they don't think they're going to be used for science. So just throughout this whole process, it's just really important for us to make sure that we're being respectful of the site and of the previous inhabitants of it, and of Marcus, and yes, and of the entire site. So it was really amazing that we were able to find it, and we hope that we're doing our best with being respectful towards this significant find in Roman archaeology and in archaeology in general. Oh, and I didn't go into it yet, but so it's important that he was inhumated because Romans did not do that typically. And with the inscription that we found nearly fully intact on the front of the mausoleum, we were able to see that he was Greek of sorts, and he was a slave to the city and was freed, and then was able to become rich too. So we also have his name, I believe, on some city documents that were found, which is crazy. And with that, he was freed, and then he was able to become very wealthy, hence how he has an entire mausoleum to himself. And then it even says, it gives information on the inscription that leads us to understand information about plays that were being performed in Greek. And so there's a lot of information going out that says that this is like the first ever finds of Greek life in Pompeii. However, Greek life in Pompeii has been found before, but this is kind of the first sign that shows us that Greek plays were being performed alongside plays that were being performed in Latin, obviously, since in the Roman Empire they were speaking Latin. So it's a very interesting find, and there's so much more. However, I'm limited to what I can say until the publications come out. But yes, those two things, and then Pompeii in general and our finds, it was an insane summer. And I think that is all that I have. So that's what I did this past summer, no biggie, just casual. Oh, and I want to say thank you to the Archaeological Institute of America Los Angeles Society for awarding me the undergraduate field work scholarship. So I was able to go on these field work excavations. And I also want to say thank you to ASTOR, because they funded another one of my projects this summer. And that also allowed me to go to Spain and Italy this past summer. But yes, so thank you, and I will stop sharing now. But yes.
Thank you, Lauren. You had one of the most like textbookly cool summers an archaeology student could ever have. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for Lauren? We can also do one big mega question session at the end. So maybe that's what we'll do. Okay, next up is Sean.
All right, so I did not have the chance to get out into the field, but I was still incredibly busy. I really spent the entire summer hitting the books. So let's get into that. So one of the things I did over the summer is I took ancient Greek. I took 4 semesters worth of ancient Greek, thanks to funding from the classics department. Much appreciated. And I was very happy. We spent a lot of the time reading like actual literature. So I got to read Plato's Symposium and the center bit of the Odyssey where Odysseus recounts his voyage. So that was incredibly fun and incredibly rewarding. And now I can read the Greek half of a bilingual inscription on this monument on the right that I have studied. I could only read the Latin up until now. So kalos estin, it's good. So I also did the Provost Research Fellowship, which was incredibly rewarding. So this was research I'm doing for my history honors thesis, but like most of my history research papers, I'm really sneaking archaeology in there. It's as much an archaeology thesis as it is a history thesis. So the topic I'm doing is Ottoman spoliation and colonial Europe's response during the long 19th century. And the title before the colon will be Battlefield of Imperial Identity. Because what I'm really doing is I'm casting this spolia as an Ottoman claim to be, inheritors towards the legacy of classical civilization in the Mediterranean. There's all sorts of little, local concerns going on at each of the case studies I'm examining, but broadly speaking, it's making this big claim to, the imperial mantle. But then when the colonial Europeans show up, and I went through a lot of, travel logs, records written by archaeologists from the 19th century, which was very interesting. They do things a little bit differently than we do. After going through them, you can see these colonial Europeans, not mentioning Ottoman spoliation, but mentioning like Ottoman Turkish spoliation, but mentioning Ottoman Greek spoliation to be sort of like Phil-Hellenic and try and diminish the foothold of the Ottomans in the Aegean. You also see them drawing these Ottoman structures without the spoliation and putting in more generically Oriental buildings. So there's all sorts of interesting stuff that these colonial Europeans are doing to compartmentalize the Ottomans away from the classical past. And I won't, delve into the details too much, but I had an excellent time doing research for this project. And it did produce some paintings in mine. I got really into the sites I was looking at. I also had a job working with Dornsife Communications. I was making, fun educational videos, which were inspired by Archaeologists Anonymous. For those of you who saw what I did last summer, last year. So that was really fun to see the Archaeologists Anonymous work get me a job. That was very exciting. And I have archaeology video ideas planned. So I'm thinking of, so you want to be an archaeologist? So we're going to do some, like career talk, what goes into being an archaeologist, and perhaps a tour of the Archaeology Research Center. So I want to incorporate archaeology on the main Dornsife Communications page. So I have plans for that. But yes, this job was really rewarding. And those are some of the videos I did on the right, the thumbnails. So I also spent a lot of the summer, doing publications, with the anticipation of a grad school in mind. Having, a good publication record is always important. So I published these 3 archaeology articles on the top. These are undergraduate research journals. So the top one is basically a version of a chapter from my history honors thesis about Ottoman spoliation. And the bottom 2 are these really incredible sites in Safavid, Iran that I studied for a Safavid history course. And I got those published in undergraduate research journals, which was really exciting. And then perhaps most exciting of all is getting published in an actual adult journal. So Mediterranean Studies I'm currently in the process of getting an article about Ottoman spoliation published in Mediterranean Studies in a special issue about memory in the Mediterranean. So, more to come there, but that was very, very exciting. So that's another thing I did this summer, was lining up the publications. So here's also some miscellaneous stuff. With my newfound knowledge of Latin and Greek, I fashioned a new pair of sunglasses with epithets from Aeneas, because I figured, he's a Trojan, I'm a Trojan. So we have some, companionship there. I've become absolutely obsessed with ancient Greek. Like half my belongings have ancient Greek inscriptions on them now. And then I also, my grandmother gave me this plaster cast of an ancient Greek theater mask, which she got in Athens in the 70s I think at the Athenian Museum of the Agora. So I made a new friend. And I also went to Providence. That's the Athenaeum in the bottom left. And I visited it because it was cool. They had some really interesting artifacts there. They had like a weirdly decent collection of Egyptian artifacts, which was very exciting. And then they also had some primary sources for me to work with in terms of travel sources for my honors thesis. And then on the right, I visited my brother in Boston, and while I was there, I visited the Museum of Fine Arts. So I had a great time. I chose this photo specifically because that particular object was on my art history 120 final. So it was really funny to see this object that I'd written, a mini essay about on a test in person. So yes, that is what I did last summer. Gratias Maximas. Eucharista.
All right, thank you, Sean. Truly a summer of knowledge and learning. Okay, next up is Dr. Mayfield, I believe.
Hi, let me share my screen. I'm sorry I have a few students in here from my other class. You've seen some of this, so I apologize. Some of it is just a little bit of a redo. Okay, so last summer, actually, I did not go into the field, so I put some pictures up of me in the field to try to make myself feel a little bit better. So these are just from a couple of different sites, but I'm looking forward to getting back into the field. So field work in 2020 was obviously canceled. In 2021, it got canceled again, partly because of COVID, and then partly because a hurricane hit my site. So I'm going to show you a few pictures kind of before and after of that as well. But I did spend quite a bit of time this summer working on primary source documents. Much like Sean, they were from 1700s and 1800s. The 1800s are better to read. In the 1700s, there's no spelling standards. And there are these weird S's that look like F's. And in my brain, I read them like F's, and it really wears you down after a while. But I've been going through some company records, like basically board of directors meeting for the Puritan venture capitalists that started one of the sites that I'm working on. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But so I did that. In fact, I haven't been able to do a lot of historical document research, so it was kind of nice to have some time to do that, because after comps in grad school, you're always looking for time to read, even though comps makes you never want to read anymore. I also wanted to mention here both the sites where I work, and I'll tell you a little bit about them. Similar to what Dr. Heller is doing, I work directly with Native peoples to develop our research design for one. What do they need out of archaeology, but also to help with the narrative as well. So it's a different part of the world, but similar. And it's just extremely rewarding. I know you can probably hear that in both of our voices when we talk about it. It's a great way to do archaeology. And I think, to me, it's more meaningful, instead of me just walking in and going, here's what's happening here, to actually deal with the stakeholders of that history. So something important. So I just wanted to go over quickly two of the sites, the two sites where I'm a a co-director at a site in Ambergris Key in San Pedro Town with Scott Simmons, who's at UNC Wilmington. And then I'm the principal investigator for the Old Providence and Santa Catalina Islands archaeological project, which quite a few USC students have been out there. They were out there in 2019. And then I've actually got, I think, at least 3 former students who just graduated who are going to be supervisors next summer, which I'm super excited about. And they're working also on their own projects as well on the site. So the 2 sites, I wanted to give you just a quick map if this will move forward. Where I'm working right now, you can see Belize up at the top. In San Pedro Town, it's on Ambergris Key, which is about an hour off the coast, which is a fantastic boat ride, by the way. It is absolutely gorgeous. And then down you can see south east of there, you cannot actually see the island because it's only 8.5 square miles in area, but it's called, there's 2 islands actually, Old Providence and Santa Catalina. And I'm interested in the Caribbean generally, also in Mesoamerica, Central America, a little bit of South America, but I'm interested in island and coastal sites, especially during the colonial period. This was an area, it wasn't just like, oh, it's all one colonial entity. There were a lot of them kind of fighting it out. There were pirates. It's really a very interesting area. And you know, it's Caribbean islands. I mean, who's gonna say no to that? Seriously, terrible. So just a quick review of the sites. One is San Pedro Town. You can see here, this is actually a tourist area. It's pretty Cadillac of archaeology, I have to say. There's like air conditioning and grocery stores and nightclubs and things. So, and it's right on the beach. So it's pretty nice. And here's just a couple of pictures of the site. It's a really small site. And so we can open up pretty big units. We actually need to, because of all the sand, it can be dangerous if we don't get a pretty wide unit. But there's only so far we can go down because you start to hit the ocean at some point. So you have to be careful of that. When you get to drive around golf carts all the time, which is always super fun. This is just, I think this is an interesting photo. These are some of the artifacts. This is actually from one level, so just one level of about 10 centimeters. If you notice here, there are Maya artifacts, and there are things all the way to like, 5 years ago. The reason that this happens is just the movement of the sand and the soil there. And so you could have a 900-year-old skeleton with, a Heineken bottle like next to their head. So the stratigraphy is not great, but it's interesting. The other thing I'll point out, if you look at the upper kind of, I would say right top hand corner, kind of those brightly colored ceramics, those are from around the 1850s to the 1880s. There's so little acid, the soil is so non-acidic here that it looks like they got broken yesterday. These have been in the ground, since, at least, prior to 1880. So it's pretty, and there's plastic in here too, all the way. And if you look down at the bottom, I know Dr. Heller's like, I see what's going on there, because he knows. So if you can see my mouse here, these are fishing weights right here, and these are also fishing weights. These are a little bit later because when you start here, you look here, they made fishing weights out of just broken pottery. And then some very enterprising individual came along and said, hey, let's just make fishing weights. So it's a good way to date it too. We did have a spindle whorl, but I don't think it was in this one. So, but I know Dr. Heller could identify literally every single one of these. So the other site is Old Providence and Santa Catalina Island. You can see we're going to Belize all the way down to Providence down here. This is just an overhead shot of the island. Like I said, it's very small. You can make it around the whole island in a golf cart in like 20-25 minutes tops. And these are the sites that we excavated in 2019, and we'll go back to some of those spots, but then we're going into the interior a little bit as well, which is very, very mountainous. It definitely looks like Jurassic Park. It just kind of shoots up out of the ocean. So it's a really interesting site. The site was originally founded in 1629. I'll just give you the brief overview by the same Puritan venture capitalist that started the Massachusetts Bay Company. So this, the Mayflower went to what is now the United States. The Seaflower went to Providence Island. Clearly it did not go as well as Massachusetts. Part of that was just the period of time and kind of what was going on there. Henry Morgan, the pirate, took it over for a couple of years. The guy with the rum, the rum that you can't drink after 30, by the way, because you could get some rot gut. But also it is supposed to be I guess you could say the actual location of Treasure Island, the book. We don't know, right? We don't know. This is a map though from the book. And if you flip it over and you stare at it long enough, it really does look pretty similar. But I don't know, I can talk myself into and out of it, but I think it's an interesting part of the story. And just after 1629, the rest of the history is basically pirates took it over, and then Spanish took it over, and then the Dutch took it over, and then pirates took it over, and then they joined Colombia, basically. So it was really a lot of kind of turmoil, but the population that originally colonized the island still lives there today. So these are descendants of the original colony. So just a few more pictures. You can see some of the mountains in the background. It definitely looks kind of piratey, I will say. Looks like, what is it, Assassin's Creed Black Flag a little bit. These are some pictures. A lot of these are our USC students. We also work with the local school, and we go do excavations at the local middle school, which is super fun because 12-year-olds have a terrible attitude until we show them that they get to dig in the dirt, and then they have a great time. So they all come out kind of like with a little bit of attitude, and then it's so fun. It's just like minutes and everybody's super excited. So that's a period of time where, you know, you're supposed to not like nerdy stuff, and yet they do. So it's really fun. And then these are just some of the artifacts. You probably already recognize some of them because they're colonial period and they were much the same. The preservation isn't quite as good there. It's a little bit more acidic. This object right here, I wanted to point out, and I was not able to get a good picture of it. Although hopefully next time I'm gonna bring a different type of camera, but this is a bone die. I mean, how piratey is that too? And I'm not kidding, it was found by a playing card. I'm like, okay, somebody did this as a joke or something, but it's not like human bone, it's probably cow bone, but just wanted to show you that. And also one of the issues that I'm dealing with right now, and kind of not just kind of materially and, you know, what has happened to this space, but also maybe philosophically a little bit as an archaeologist. This is Hurricane Iota that went, this is the island right here. It basically went straight over it. 98% of the infrastructure was destroyed. We couldn't get a hold of anybody for 3 days, but they are so efficient that by the time the spotter plane went out, they had already cleared off the runway so they could actually land. But that was the first time they were spotted. So it took, and nobody died during the hurricane, and it was a bad couple days for them for sure. And it recovery is going, but slowly, but they will get back. This has happened there before. So just a few pictures here. This is what it looks like at the moment, which is really, really difficult to see. It actually looks a little bit better than this. This was right after it happened. So all the trees are stripped off too. This is the bridge that goes in between the two islands. Obviously that is somewhere in the ocean. At this point, you can just see how flattened everything is. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about quickly here, this is the museum, which was completely destroyed, completely everything in it. Thankfully, our artifacts were being stored off-site because they didn't have room. They survived, although they did get wet. So I'm sure the bone has been damaged and, you know, some other things, but most of it should be okay. But we did find out, it was like 6 months later, they were able to find it. So the artifacts did survive. But one thing I started thinking about just as an archaeologist, you know, what are archaeological data? We took a tour when we were at, you know, there, because you go to the museum. That's what you do. You and the students go to the museum. These are not even B-roll. This is like C and D roll. I was just snapping pictures. But ultimately, this is a landscape that doesn't exist anymore. This is archaeological data, right? So I ended up doing an addendum to my site report and turning in many. I had like 200 of them, and I turned them all in, and they're terrible. They're not well done, or, you know, I was just snapping pictures. But ultimately, you know, as archaeologists, we need to think about the spaces that we're moving through now that might be gone. So we basically, you know, got to excavate before this kind of new phase that's going to be happening at the site as they rebuild. So that is it. If I can get this to stop, I will stop sharing. And you can, oh no, I've lost all of my stuff. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Stop share. Okay, there we go. So that's it. So thank you. Let me know if y'all have any questions. Even email me. That's totally fine.
Thank you for sharing. It's like, it's really hard to see, but hoping for everyone involved to be rebuilding in the future. All right, I'm gonna close us off. So I had a bit of a different summer, I would say. I was not excavating. I was not hitting the books. I was working at a Jewish summer camp. So I promise this will relate somehow. But I was off working in Ojai, California at Camp Ramah. This is like my 13th summer there, something crazy like that. It's pretty cool. We have a swimming pool with water slides. We have a bonfire and a ropes course. I was living in one of these tent cabins with a bunch of 13-year-olds for 8 weeks. It was really fun. But the sad part was that why won't it let me? There we go. I was not experiencing any archaeology, which I was really hoping to do last summer. But because of COVID and other things, I was like, it's better for me to be working at a place where I know that I will be able to go and be working versus putting all my fate into being able to travel internationally or even within the country. So I had made my decision, but I was kind of bummed that I wasn't going to be experiencing any archaeology. But however, I decided that I was going to use my USC education and use some archaeology over the summer. So the thing with Jewish summer camp is that it's not all fun. You have periods of the day when you're supposed to sit and learn about Jewish things. And most kids do not like that. And the big fun thing about this summer is that we had no specialized staff. So normally we bring in teachers, like Jewish day school teachers to teach Jewish things. That was my part of my job this summer because we were at low capacity for staff. So I was teaching all the things, but that meant that I could abandon the curriculum that was given to me and make my own curriculum, because as fun as doing Hebrew alphabet yoga sounds, I would much rather be doing something else. So I was very smart and I brought my ancient Jewish magic textbook with me to camp, because where else would I use that if not at Jewish summer camp? And I started creating curriculums to teach a bunch of 13-year-olds. And yeah, just a quick shout out to Christine Garraway from Hebrew Union College for teaching this class. If anyone ever has the chance to take it, it's incredible. And I started teaching all these kids like 13-year-old versions of stuff from this textbook and stuff from this class. And I'll tell you, they were so much happier to be learning about like sympathetic magic than whatever text study that we would have been doing otherwise. And once I exhausted that, I realized, wait a second, I wrote a paper in Dr. Mayfield's Intro to Archaeology class based on an activity that I did in my Jewish history class about archaeology and biblical stuff. So I made another curriculum that talked about Sennacherib's prism and Hezekiah's tunnels, and I brought it down to 13-year-old level. So I got to be a Jewish archaeological educator this summer, which was super cool and very rewarding to see a bunch of kids that really hate authority and hate learning actually like enjoy something that I liked and that they thought was cool. So yeah, that's what I did this summer. And I'm very proud. It was super cool. So yeah, those are all of our speakers planned for the evening, unless Dr. Dodd wants to whip out a surprise, wonderful Broadway musical extravaganza.
I think I'm going to give you guys a pass on my solo today, but ask me to come back in a month and talk to you about what I did last summer. This has been amazing. I have loved hearing everybody's presentations. I feel so lucky.
Thank you. Oh, and I see Louis popped on. Louis, we will be asking you to come back and speak for realsies in a bigger way, I promise. But with that, that is what we did last summer. And if anyone has any like final big questions, feel free to send them in the chat or raise your hand or unmute yourself or turn on your camera or whatnot. For those of you watching the recording for extra credit for Dr. Mayfield's class, thank you for watching the recording. And that's all I got.
Thank you so much for hosting, Anna. That was really amazing. This is always such a fun event. You know, I think Dr. Dodd said earlier that, you know, part of liking archaeology is liking archaeologists. I think we're a really fun group, you know, and, you know, we're all a little bit wacky in our own way and interesting. And I really enjoy, just so you know, all of you as colleagues, and I'm saying that for the students as well, that I feel that way about all of you. And I'm so excited about how you're applying what you're doing. It's modern and wonderful. And I'm really thankful to be working with you all. So that's all. I just wanted to, you know, I always get a little verklempt at the end because I'm just really excited to have these opportunities.
Yes, and if you are interested in having Dr. Mayfield gush over you, please either join STARC, request membership on Engage SC. That's where we send out all of our emails. And if you're not ready to commit to that, follow us on Instagram. That's where we post more casual little infographics about everything that we're doing. Social speaker series. We have a bunch of fun stuff planned for the upcoming semester. And get involved in archaeology. We are small, so that means there are many opportunities. And everyone just wants to help everyone. And it's really fun and great. So please get involved, especially those of you that are just getting introduced to the program or just transferred. Please join us. Thank you. I think I'll stop recording now.